Hello and welcome to the Draft Central YouTube channel. Today we've got a very special episode for you today. I'm your host Michael Alvaro, and with me as always is Draft Central Chief Editor Peter Williams. How are you today, mate?
Yeah, really good. Looking forward to getting stuck into this and, covering how the AFL Women's Draft went down.
Yeah, well, that's exactly what I was going to go on to say now, is that we're going to be looking through all of the trends and I guess our initial thoughts about the AFLW draft, obviously looking at the top 10, every club's first pick, and soon after that we'll have club-by-club breakdowns for you to go through in a little playlist on our YouTube channel, so keep an eye out for that. But we're going to get stuck straight into it. All right, so running through the top 10, Peter, we obviously had a couple of surprise picks. At the top end, there were no surprises, though. Pick 1, Gold Coast selected Charlie Rowbottom. This was a pretty straightforward one after she nominated Queensland, you would have thought?
Absolutely. Obviously, prior to that, we were thinking perhaps Tegan Levi was the obvious one to sort of go at pick 1, but once Charlie sort of nominated up there, they sort of had the 50-50, but you presumed, based on all the, talk around it, that she was going to go as that first selection, and so it turned out that she had the photo shoot the day before, so she knew she was definitely going there with pick 1, so a bit of relief for her, and obviously gets up to the Sunshine State to give them a bit of a boost in the midfield.
And you touched on her a little bit there in closing, but what does she offer to the Suns?
Yeah, definitely. Like, she plays obviously through the midfield, can play forward, very strong, contested over her head. She's about that 178 kind of size, which is taller than some rucks going around. So she's definitely one that can play multiple roles and certainly have impact around the ground. So certainly someone who will probably start forward and then push into the midfield.
And Georgie Prasparkas, your number one in the nationwide power rankings, Pete, was pick 2 over to Geelong, the first Victorian pick, and another easy one we would have thought.
Yeah, definitely. I think there weren't too many who were, coming up with a different top 2. So I think Prasparkas was the logical choice for Geelong. Again, she was sort of told, as we saw on draft night the day before, that she was going to sort of get picked up by Geelong. So that was fantastic for her. Obviously, we know Maddie being at Carlton, and we know there's conversation about all the expansion, Essendon coming in, whatnot, played with Essendon and VFL. But in terms of what she can offer Geelong, obviously inside mid, just wins a ton of the ball. She's really adapted to that VFLW level and will come straight in, I would imagine, to that midfield. But we do know she can play forward because she kicked 7 goals in a game as a sort of 15, 16-year-old a couple of years back. So we know she can play one out in the square as well. So even though she's not that tall compared to some, she's a bit taller than Maddie and certainly can hit the scoreboard as well as play through that midfield.
Certainly she can. West Coast was the first West Australian team to pick with number 3, and Charlotte Thomas, a bit of a surprise out of Subiaco, hasn't played too much footy this year.
No, only played the one game, and I suspect that perhaps West Coast thought that Fremantle might pounce. We thought that Courtney Rowley might be the selection here, and in the end it didn't matter because they just basically effectively swapped their positions. But, Charlie Thomas, able to play forward about the 175, but she can play all around the ground. Very good kick of the footy, great decision maker. And you can see that with what West Coast have targeted. They've gone for good ball users, players that can hit targets, and they've really addressed that throughout the draft, and it was a draft that I really liked for them. So for me, Charlie Thomas can come straight in and go up forward, or like we said with the top 2, play through the midfield. So very versatile types we're seeing in the early picks.
And that theme's going to continue as well with the 4th pick to St Kilda, Ella Friend from the GWV Rebels, one that I know you were really, really high on this year.
Yeah, definitely. Athletic key forward, best contested mark going around, can clunk them in packs and just really reliable with her hands. Lovely left foot kick too, very powerful kick. And we saw later in the season, second half of the season, she pushed up to a wing just to show off her sort of athleticism and ability to play up there. So while she hasn't played as much inside compared to some of the others, she's obviously got the body to do so at that sort of 175 size. So she's able to, pull down those big marks, be that key forward, which will probably be what she'll do to help out the likes of Caitlin Greiser down there and then potentially play through the midfield and, roll along a wing and just break down the opposition zone with her long kicking.
And Stella Reid's another one who's got a pretty penetrative kick, can play, I guess, like we've said with most of these players, absolutely anywhere on the ground. A premiership player with Oakley and one with heaps of talent.
Absolutely. Probably the most versatile of the lot when we're talking about that. Started half back, moved in onto the wing, then went half forward and, kicked 3 goals in the grand final in Oakley's premiership win. So Stella Reid's definitely someone who can just plug a hole anywhere. And realistically, when you're a Richmond developing team, you've got a bit more midfield depth coming in. You've probably had the forward line that's been all right in past years, and you just kind of want maybe some talent to sort of slot in that wherever you need it for sort of filling a hole. Then Stella Reid's definitely that type. Again, another left footer, nice user of the ball, able to find space really, really well, probably better than most players. So, and a smooth mover as well. So definitely not too much of a surprise. I think she was 4th overall on my rankings. So definitely around the mark and a good selection for Richmond.
And Gold Coast are on the board again with pick 6, taking their own local Tegan Levi Academy product, of course, and joining her sister Maddie in the Suns program.
Absolutely. As we found out from Maddie, great athlete. The whole family's great athletes. She's come from a rugby background, Tegan, and, they're able to really run hard, and they've got that powerful burst. And what sets her aside from a lot of other players in this draft is her ability to hit targets and being a really good user and decision maker by foot, despite being that inside midfielder. So she's probably one of the best ball users of this group. And certainly at that selection is more than enough, like around right for that pick, and she could well be higher in an open draft. So she's definitely a great get for Gold Coast, and we know that her sister Maddie's over at Tokyo at the moment, like competing over there. So, they're very talented family, and Tegan and along with Charlie Rowbottom, as we said, will be a real 1-2 combo. Very strong, very able to burst out of a stoppage. So a couple of really great acquisitions for the Suns.
Absolutely, and they got 2 picks in the top 10. Geelong had 3. Their second was Zali Friswell, obviously a teammate, a long-time teammate of Georgie Prasparkas, one who isn't just a sweetener in that sort of draft deal, but one who's got a lot of talent in her own right.
Absolutely. Like Zali Friswell was just a terrific midfielder throughout the year. And I know seeing her earlier in the year that I rated her really highly for her ball use and her athleticism and being able to move around the ground. Obviously, we saw going to Vic Metro, sort of they put her in the back pocket because of the amount of strength, I guess, if you like, in the midfield, and then went to Essendon and has been playing a lot forward. So they're sort of not quite her positions. It was good to see that she didn't get overlooked because on midfield ability, she's definitely one of the better midfielders in the draft. And her ball use is definitely up there with some of the better players, and being able to burst away and have a high endurance rate as well to be able to win the ball in space or in close. She's definitely someone who can slot straight into the Geelong midfield if need be, but obviously has been working on those other positions just to get a game anywhere. But certainly will work really well with Prasparkas in there, having been those Calder Cannons teammates in that midfield.
And Ashanti Bush was pick 8 to the Gold Coast, obviously the lone Northern Territory prospect taken, and one who's aligned there to the Suns. Came through the Darwin Buffets, if I can get that one out, and Hawthorn VFLW. What does she offer to the Suns? Yeah,
very exciting forward. Obviously, AFLW Academy member as the top age, if you like, player in that AFLW Academy. We know a bit of a raw talent, but very, very exciting and dangerous at ground level. Hits the scoreboard multiple times, kicked a couple of goals in a couple of minutes against the GWV Rebels in the NAB League Girls, so can certainly do a lot of damage when given the chance, and quite mobile, able to really outsmart her opponents. So someone who I think will be very, very exciting in the coming years. And, as she develops the game further in the elite system, it's going to be really exciting to watch her go to town inside that forward line.
And speaking of excitement, pick 9 Geelong, their third of the top 10. Gabby Featherston, we know that they love a local, and this girl's got plenty of athleticism.
Yeah, absolutely. Very exciting pick. Really like this selection. We wondered if they were going to go local, despite, all the talent that is around. And definitely Gabby Featherston's probably the one that has, the superior vertical leap when we're talking about players that are sub 170. Did play in the ruck for a bit. Obviously, she's more of that sort of high half forward, can play deep. Very strong overhead and very powerful kick. And she's one that I also said throughout the year, if she is able to sort of get that composure a bit right when she's going for goal, then she could be really anything going forward. So very exciting, and someone who provides that X factor inside 50 for the Cats, and another scoring option.
And at the other end, another Geelong Falcons product, Annie Lee, part of that, obviously NAB Grand Final making team. She went to Carlton with pick 10 rounding out those selections. Obviously a best available sort of pick there for the Blues.
Absolutely. Like, anyone who's sort of read our stuff throughout the year knows I've rated Annie Lee's game throughout the year. Really consistent, just ticks a lot of boxes. When you look at players, she didn't make too many mistakes. She's just sort of good across the board, and that really stands out when you watch her play. She's able to use the ball consistently well. She's able to intercept. She's able to do the defensive things. Just everything she just does well, and I think that's definitely deserving of where she got picked up. And obviously, as we found out, and saw on draft night, a Carlton supporter, so they always love when they go to the team that they supported growing up. Obviously, we know it doesn't always happen, but certainly it means it adds that extra bit of talent for Carlton. They had the back-to-back picks, and certainly able to bring Lee in means they've got a ready-made defender who can just slot straight into half-back and be relied upon to use the ball well.
And they did get back-to-back Blue supporters as well, Annie Lee and Keely Shearer there with picks 10 and 11. So good stuff for the Blue Baggers. We're going to quickly run through all the other clubs' first picks as well before we go through a few of the themes of the draft. And North Melbourne, they were first on the board at pick 13 with Tess Craven.
Yeah, absolutely. And there was, some potential for Tess Craven to go in the top 5. So no doubt North Melbourne would have been thrilled to get Tess down at that selection at 13. So, inside midfielder will slot straight into, well, maybe not for North given their strength in there, but definitely someone who could slot straight into that midfield group if required. A really hard worker, really consistent, put up a terrific performance throughout the year, and certainly a standout Geelong Falcon. Obviously, it was star-studded, and, she took home the best and fairest overall. So certainly a player to watch in the coming years, and more ready-made than a few others, so will be really exciting for her.
Another player to watch in that very next pick for Fremantle's first selection was Amy Franklin out of Claremont. What do you see best in her game?
Yeah, the athleticism for her size is very hard to match. Like, she's able to do it in the air or do it at ground level. Like, not too many key forwards that if it, goes in front of them, that they can not only beat the smaller opponent, but they can, out race them basically the ball, and once she's goal side, she's very hard to stop. So very exciting talent, good overhead, good at ground level, as I said. So teaming up with Roxy Rue in that forward line is going to be a real big headache for opposition defenders, given the pair's athleticism, and certainly one that Fremantle fans can get really excited by.
And we know that Adelaide has plenty of tall stocks and ruck stocks for that matter, but Zoe Prowse was a pretty easy choice for their first selection at number 17. Tell us a little bit about her.
Absolutely. So obviously a AFLW Academy member, been a really highly touted prospect for a number of years now as a ruck, coming through the Sturt program, been playing there since sort of 15, really leading that ruck division. So certainly copped a lot of knocks, against bigger bodies and senior bodies, so ready-made to come in. But her athleticism is, superb. So she can actually go forward. She can even play as a midfielder like she did this year. She obviously played in the ruck at the championships due to South Australia's lack of sort of rucks that were available. So, but certainly she can play anywhere on the ground, and I think she'll have to, given, as we've seen, Montana McKinnon not being able to squeeze into that Adelaide lineup. Just shows how strong they are in the ruck division. So expect Prowse to sort of play maybe forward or around the ground, but definitely when she comes in, she'll have an impact because she's just so good at ground level as well as in the air.
And it arcs back to that sort of trait of versatility that we saw at the top end as well. And I believe Zoe Prowse would have probably been up there had it been a sort of national pool. But Brisbane, they were at pick 18 for their first selection, and a local talent in Maggie Harmer from the Maroochydore Roos, the talent factory out there, is doing it again.
Absolutely. Like, they had several players picked up from Maroochydore, obviously, and they had a lot of AFLW Academy members, and Maggie Harmer's one of them. Can play off half-back, push up to the wing. She uses the ball really well. A great athlete as well, really hard runner. Works really, really hard to win the ball and can intercept as well and take the game on. So an exciting talent who can step straight in, and certainly one who's got that versatility as we keep bringing up with these players, but someone who can certainly impact a game, not just in the way that she wins it, but once she has won it, being able to use metres gained and really take off. And that'll be, Brisbane don't need a lot, but it'll definitely be a great addition to the Lions squad.
Absolutely, the reigning premiers there with a very handy pick at number 18. But a couple of Victorian teams came into the fold in the 20s in the Western Bulldogs and Collingwood, picking up Amanda Ling and Eliza James, respectively. Obviously, two Oakley Chargers premiership players. Tell us a bit about them.
Yeah, so obviously Amanda Ling won the best on ground in the grand final. Superb season, really consistent effort. Another, I guess what you'd say, top ager in the under-19s competition. So someone who went back, could have gone VFLW, opted to go back to Oakley and really showed why she did that, because she worked on a few things, and her evasion, sidestep, ability to get out of trouble is just superb. Her hands are really, really clean. She gets forward, wins a lot of clearances around the ball. So someone who can just impact that way, where Eliza James has had a really good season up forward. She can push into the midfield, but certainly really damaging around goals. Lovely kick of the ball when she's infield and up the ground, can set things up, very creative, and certainly able to, she's already stepped into the VFLW program for the Magpies, so and will be playing in a grand final. So someone who is definitely going to be a player long-term for them, and someone who they know they can rely on, as they've already seen it at senior level for their VFLW.
And GWS, they were pick 37 first on the board for them. Ali Morfitt, the local talent that they rewarded with that first selection, played a bit in NAB League as well this year.
Yeah, absolutely. Murray Bushrangers product, obviously out of Canberra, or out of Wagga Wagga, I should say, playing at the AFL Canberra, came second in the best and fairest as a bottom major, so 16-year-old against senior players, and there were a sprinkling of AFLW talent in that comp, so it's a fairly decent comp. Playing through the ruck, very, very strong, good contested mark, very competitive, can play forward as well, which is where she's likely to play, obviously teaming up with Erin McKinnon there at the Giants. Morfitt's just got a lot of upside, plenty of potential, but certainly a bit of a different look compared to some of the other rucks who are very athletic, but she's definitely more ready-made and very strong. And certainly, being a part of the Giants Academy, they know all about her, and she's already been well entrenched in that program.
And you segued pretty nicely with athletic rucks. Georgia Campbell is exactly that, from Melbourne's first pick at number 41 out of the Eastern Ranges, and obviously a bit of a steal as a father-daughter pick. Absolutely.
We know, as we sort of touched on, or have sort of seen, that they were looking for height and ready-made players. We saw them pick up Taylor Harris over the off-season. We have seen them regenerate the list over the last two seasons. They've really sped up the process, though, and they obviously picked up Talia Gillard with the next selection too, so they went with plenty of height, but developing tools that they can bring straight in once they've done their apprenticeship, if you like. So Campbell's someone who I think isn't too far away once she gets going, but she definitely moving in transition, being able to, be really mobile around the ground, play through ruck, play through forward, but she's relied upon she can get the ball in midfield and then dispose of it forward. So she's able to do that, which is rare for a lot of rucks, but she's someone who can actually get involved in those scoring chains. So definitely an exciting pick, and, at that selection, it's a real steal for the Demons.
Yeah, and just for context, where do you think she would have fitted in an open draft?
Oh, I definitely think she'd be first round, top 20 for sure, depending on where the picks fell. But yeah, she definitely would have attracted a top 20 bid. So that's another reason why Melbourne did really well to clear out their picks. Obviously, they brought in Harris, Purcell, they've been able to do that. But it was definitely a wise decision, especially if they did that prior to knowing or after they knew that they were going to get Campbell. So they might as well move them out and then get quality players and then still get her for a late bargain, really.
Yeah, D's have done really well in the off-season and during the draft period, but we're going to regroup a little bit here after we've dissected the top 10 and all of the first picks for each club. But next, we're going to look through those trends, as we said at the top of the show, and a few of the surprises throughout the draft. All right, now we're going to zip through some of the trends and maybe a few of the surprises of the AFLW draft here with Peter Williams, of course, Chief Editor of Draft Central. And first off the bat, early in the order, we're expecting a few inside mids maybe to be selected, with St Kilda maybe, I guess, in the business for some. Did that end up happening?
Well, no to what we thought. We thought that Rowbottom and Prasparkas were going to go. We knew that was going to happen. But then there were names like Amanda Ling and Tess Craven all sort of anticipated to go in those first few potentially. And then it didn't quite happen. Obviously, Ella Friend went to St Kilda. Richmond opted for the more outside but sort of classy Stella Reid. So there were a few different surprises. And then I think that clubs had the players they were keen on their list. So obviously Geelong Friswell, who can play inside or outside. But then you had like your Featherston that Geelong already sort of committed to over Craven. We thought Craven might go at one of their selections. And then obviously Carlton, as we saw from their draft night video, the ones they were keen on. So obviously by the time it got down to North, they couldn't really refuse her anymore. I don't know if they thought she was going to be there, but it was a great get for her. And then obviously Ling slipping all the way to the Bulldogs was really interesting because I don't think many thought they were going to get her down there. So to an extent, you had the first two you knew about, but then aside from them, the next couple of real inside midfielders, if you like, depending on whether you classify Friswell, who's sort of that balanced mid, there weren't really many others in that group that from the Victorian pool that went that as high as we thought. So it was very interesting to see that, and a few talls going in there too.
Yeah, I mean, there are a couple of surprises at that top end. Unsurprisingly, though, the talls were picked up in that first round. The top 20 we had, I think a handful of them really go pretty early within that first round. Who are some of those and why were they so impressive?
Yeah, so obviously if we're talking to that 175 plus type size, we've got Charlotte Thomas who, she'll play forward but could easily play mid. We know that she can do that. Ella Friend, we sort of spoke about, great contested mark, key forward. She'll add something to that Saints forward line. You've got Amy Franklin, the athletic tall, Zoe Prowse, the ruck, and Tara Slender, the other one we didn't mention earlier, obviously going to North Melbourne in that top 20, who, was third on my power rankings overall. So I certainly got her as the steal of the draft realistically. And the fact that she's 175 and can play all three lines kind of tells just how versatile she is. So, by my count, that's sort of that 175 plus, although theoretically Rowbottom is above that height as well. And then you look at Tegan Levi. So there's a few there that are actually not considered key position players per se, but they are that size. So, and it does blow your mind a little bit when you think that Charlie Rowbottom is a centimetre taller than Zoe Prowse. Yeah. And it's a midfielder against a ruck. So, but certainly it was good to see some of those talls go in that top 20, and that clubs are going to back them in to develop them and bring them in to play a role.
Yeah, and plenty of athleticism in that lot. We touched on Tara Slender there as one of the sort of steals of the draft heading to North Melbourne. Just give me quickly your bolter of the first round and maybe the slider as well.
Yeah, so definitely in terms of the bolter up the order, I think that Zali Friswell's the one for me that came right up. As I said earlier, that I had a sort of that top 20 mark earlier in the season, then weren't sure because of obviously being shuffled around at the Champs and VFLW, but it's great to see her get rewarded. So definitely being able to go to Geelong, I think she'll slot in, and it's a perfect sort of club for her to fit in. And then in terms of the slider, I think we sort of touched on from that first round, so Tess Craven slipping down to 13 was quite a good get for North. So certainly Craven is someone who can have an immediate impact, and as someone who could have gone in that top 5, she's certainly very good value there at 13.
And there were mature ages that went as well, as usual. And we had on pretty early in pick 15 for Geelong, their 4th pick, unbelievably, of that first round. So Annabelle Johnson, of course, from their VFLW program. She was one of them, and a few others like Megan Kiley and Imogen Barnett went as well. What are your sort of thoughts about that lot?
Yeah, so obviously Annabelle Johnson played with Geelong throughout the season, so another mature ager. They could only pick up a couple as per the compensation pick, so they picked up Olivia Fuller and Claudia Gunjaka, who is acting captain this weekend for the grand final. And Johnson's another midfielder, but versatile, can play around the ground, wins a fair bit of the ball, and has a lot of potential, still developing, but certainly got plenty of excitement when she's able to get it and put it forward, and a player who can definitely move the ball in transition. And then you look at the key forwards of Imogen Barnett, who went to Magpies after winning the leading goal kicker with them. She's obviously gone up. Imogen Milford as well went from the Ds to Carlton, so that's a couple of key forwards. They're the leading goal kickers this season, so that was really exciting. Keeley, obviously for North, was the one that I expected to go. Went probably later than I expected, considering where some of the others went. But I guess it's what the clubs were looking for and needed. So Richmond, obviously that's straight away midfield injection, if you like, of talent in there. So she's ready to go, and more midfield depth for the Tigers. And it probably also allowed them to pick the likes of Stella Reid early to be able to have that outside talent to go with the inside. So that was really good for them. So and then, of course, you got Jazzy Ferguson, Collingwood VFL, who will play off for a premiership and been playing for Collingwood for a number of years since coming out of Gippy Power. She got drafted by North, so great reward for effort and a real good story for those who want to keep going back to the draft, not giving up, because, being 22, she's someone who has been around a few years now, but has really honed in on her craft in that defensive 50. So really exciting for her. And then you look, Alison Brown, obviously another recycled player coming through, joining another team. So that was really exciting through that sort of St Kilda coming to Melbourne. And then you look over in the Waffle as well. You've got Jess Lowe and Sarah Wheelstra, who got draft combine invites last year, didn't get drafted, and then this year they've been rewarded, and they're both off to Fremantle. So Fremantle picked up a number of mature ages who got overlooked, which is really exciting for them. And obviously Queensland have a couple as well that sort of come from different backgrounds. Lucinda Puller, Luca Lashida Martin, both came from sort of soccer backgrounds and been playing through the Quaffle Women's. So plenty of mature ages getting a go, which is great news for those who maybe didn't get picked up this year but are still hoping to get picked up in coming years.
Yeah, and that's a great segue again, Pete, because as much as we've seen some surprises go early at least, there are plenty of players who we thought might be in the mix who missed out as well. So who are some of your top picks there?
Yeah, absolutely. Jade Anthony sort of headlines this group. Obviously, I rated her really, really highly. And again, there's not much you could have said that she could have done this year that she didn't do. So won Vic Country's MVP. Obviously had a few issues with concussion throughout the year, but put out when she was out on the ground, put out some terrific performances. Just a reliable kick, great decision maker. Usually used off halfback, but can play other positions. Just someone who you can see that once she is able to build a bit more of a tank, I think that she'll be really, really good in the future. Is a dual sports person as well, plays cricket, so will be exciting to see which way she goes with that. Hopefully she sort of sticks with footy as well. You can juggle it, so I'll be interested to see whether she plays NABLE again, VFLW. That's a good decision for her. And then obviously there's a few others. Nike Doijok and Gypsy Sherma, both part of the AFLW Academy. Most AFLW Academy members get picked up, but this year they didn't. They've got a few little things they've got to iron out before they get picked up. Obviously we got expansion coming up in the coming years, particularly from a South Australian perspective. We've got Port Adelaide to look at, so Gypsy Sherma's got to be one that if she doesn't get picked up by the Crows in the next year or so, that Port are definitely going to be looking at her, and same for Zoe Venning as well, like another South Australian who was unlucky, All-Australian, won West Adelaide Best and Fairest, real hard nut in there. So another one that wasn't quite able to get on a list given their limited picks. And then we've got Poppy Shap as well from Geelong Falcons, who I thought was really clean and pretty unlucky not to go. So someone who I think with another year of development could well turn heads and be a consideration for not only Geelong but other clubs as well.
All right, so just lastly, Pete, before we sort of wrap things up for good, tell me, which was your favourite draft haul overall?
Yeah, for me, I think it's got to be North Melbourne. Not only did they pick up 3 steals, one we didn't mention in Perry King, the Tasmanian, who, again, I had in my top 10 personally from the Vic pool. They picked her up, but they also got, Slender and Craven, who we've brought up. So that's 3 real great value selections for the picks they had. So from that perspective, they were terrific. And obviously Carlton, I thought, did really well. And, Gold Coast and Geelong with their selections are always going to do really, really well in that top end. So very exciting times for them, but definitely North as an overall perspective for me.
Yeah, I know you haven't asked, but I'm going to go with the Western Bulldogs. I think they're 3 selections. Obviously, they saw everyone else pick really in the Vic pool first, apart from, I think, Collingwood and Melbourne, and they picked up some bargains. So really happy for the doggies there. But that just about wraps up our show today. Of course, make sure you stay tuned to Draft Central's YouTube channel for more AFLW draft content. We're going to be wrapping up all of the clubs individually for a little playlist for your enjoyment. Other than that, stay tuned to all of our socials, Instagram, Facebook and Twitter at Draft Central Oz. And on our website, we'll have plenty of footballing content for the rest of the year. But until then, we'll see you later.